Sometimes I could swear that there's nothing more infuriating to the avid horror fan than a bad sequel to a once great movie. Only one thing may be able to top this though, and that is a sequel that doesn't just manage to disappoint us, but also turn a beloved character into a total sad sack. God, it's almost like Hollywood wants us to suffer. I'm Amy from What Culture, and here are 8 horror movies that turned badasses into total wimps. 8. A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors. Nancy Thompson. Now, we're starting off with one that you have definitely heard before on this channel, but still shouldn't be ignored. This is, of course, Nightmare on Elm Street's sweetheart Nancy Thompson. Well, some treatment for their sweetheart, I suppose, because the third installment in the franchise saw Nancy go from badass teen hero to gullible little girl. In the beginning, she's set up to be a high achiever in the movie. We're told that she is excelling in her studies, and has earned herself an early place working in the mental institution that the events of the film revolve around. We're led to think that Nancy's going to be the one to finally take out Freddy for good by teaming up with a group of other kids who suffer from his dream stalking. After all, she is incredibly smart and experienced. However, our hopes are dashed when she falls for an absolutely elementary trick by Krueger. He appears to her as her father Donald and then promptly stabs her to death. Like, are you kidding me? After all this, is she actually dumb enough to fall for something so simple, and that's what gets her killed? I mean, surely she's more of a drip than we thought she was if she can actually be taken out so easily. Honestly, Freddy should have tried that trick earlier. Sometimes less is more, I guess. 7. Scream 2 and 3. Gale Weathers. Whilst maybe Gale Weathers isn't the first person that pops into your head when you think of the word badass, if you think about it, she survived some pretty gnarly stuff and did her fair bit to contribute to the original Scream movie. It's just a shame that over the next few movies she becomes considerably more bland and vanilla. Things actually started off okay at the beginning of Scream 2, when she tried to manufacture some confrontation between Sydney and Cotton, and in the process earned herself a swift right hook to the face. In true ruthless reporter fashion, she took it like a champ and carried on working. However, by the end of the film, she's gone on her supposed redemption arc and chooses to go to hospital with Dewey rather than stay and report on the happenings of the film. I mean, yeah, sure, I guess it does make her a better person, but who wants that? We want badass, ruthless reporter Gale Weathers. Instead, by the end of Scream 3, we've essentially got Monica from Friends under a different name, as we all see them settle in and play happy families. I mean, God, how boring is that? 6. Halloween Resurrection. Michael Myers. Seeing as though there's about 100 Halloween films, they were bound to get things wrong at some point. It's just that this isn't quite how I imagined it. Just to preface this, I am absolutely not dunking on this scene because it's undeniably the best bit of the whole film. But like, hear me out. Did you ever think you'd see Michael Myers, the masked mass murderer, the psychopathic killer, the relentless reaper, get taken down by Busta Rhymes electrocuting him in the nuts? Because I sure as hell did not. It's just genuinely hilarious that after 7 installments of the franchise, where Michael wreaks absolute havoc and shows himself to be an unstoppable maniac of unbelievable power, we really all just sat here and let it happen when he got bitch slapped by Busta Rhymes and flung across the room by the sheer power of the electricity channeled through his crotch. It's been like 19 years since the film was released, and I'm still not sure whether this is what dreams or nightmares are made of. 5. The Grudge 2. Karen Davis. After all the ups and downs of the first Grudge movie, it's safe to say that none of us were quite sure what to expect from the second. Unfortunately, it was pretty disappointing overall, and this wasn't helped by the offing of our previous final girl, care worker Karen Davis, about half an hour into the film. After her insistence on survival throughout the first film, and her ability through all her struggles to still set alight the infamous haunted house, it seemed like a cop-out to kill her off so easily. Her younger sister Aubrey comes to retrieve her from the hospital she's being treated at after the events of the first film, but after having a major freak-out, Karen has to be restrained. The restraints did precisely nothing to help though, because like an idiot, despite knowing she's being haunted by the ghost of Kayako, she wanders to the roof of the hospital. Once there, she's in the perfect place for a quick and easy killing, and of course Kayako delivers, pulling her off the side of the building that she has, again stupidly, crawled to. She crashes to the pavement below in front of her sister, an anticlimactic, preventable, and ultimately disappointing death. If she survived all the events of the first movie, then why in the second movie was she suddenly so scared that she had to die immediately? 4. Freddy vs. Jason. Jason. So this one is quite debatable, to be fair, but in a lot of ways this film really did Jason dirty as a villain in his own right. Instead of being a terrifying, powerful bad guy, he's mostly just a puppet for Freddy. Time and again, Jason is controlled and directed by Freddy, summoning him and using him to do his own bidding, and tranquilizing him whilst possessing Freeburg, for example. At times, it's even framed as if Jason isn't capable enough alone to fight Freddy. If you think about it, it's the teens that drag him up to Camp Crystal Lake unconscious to have the film's big battle. Laurie even goes to sleep at one point expressly to save Jason from Freddy. I'm sorry, but since when does Jason Voorhees need saving from anyone? And since when can that guy be kept sedated long enough to be transported anywhere by a bunch of kids? When you also add into the mix that Jason apparently had a paralyzing fear of water, it just makes for a disappointing, less intimidating villain. It felt like the film added a bunch of fears and setbacks that just weren't necessary and hadn't been part of the character before. In fairness, they also tried to claim that Freddy is afraid of fire, which seems equally reductive and stupid. On the scale of things though, Jason was definitely made out to be the wimp of the pair. 3. Annabelle 2014. Annabelle herself. When we got our first taste of Annabelle in The Conjuring 2013, we had high hopes. Her face had this awful, unnerving quality, and the mystery around the demon acting through her as a conduit was intriguing. So when it was announced that she was getting her own film, that was pretty cool, right? Well, we were young and naive back then, so cue 2014 and the releasing of Annabelle and the consequent feeling of absolute disappointment. Straight away, Annabelle is given a crappy backstory, apparently having gained whatever malevolent powers she exhibits after just being around when some cultists murdered a couple. Wow, creative. Like, yeah, the couple murdered are the parents of one of the cultists, but that still doesn't really add that much more intrigue. There's some mid-level spooks and a couple of jump scares, but essentially Annabelle doesn't really do anything. Aside from the initial occultists, there is no deaths directly associated with Annabelle. And really, how badass can a demon be if all they do is make some things appear and disappear and maybe turn up on the stairs to scream at you once or twice? She was made out to have so much potential and be so dangerous in The Conjuring, and then when she actually got her own movie, she was a wet lettuce that didn't kill anyone or do anything interesting. 2. Saw 4 and all the rest. Jigsaw. Though Jigsaw isn't exactly a character himself, because like Ghostface, he is multiple people throughout the franchise, his concept and identity becomes weaker and weaker the longer the franchise drags on for. I think collectively as a society, we're ready to admit that the idea for the initial Jigsaw is a little bit janky. The idea that John Kramer is dying of a brutal cancer and somehow manages to get all the traps and prisoners sorted out and executed perfectly is ridiculous. Like, he was a dying old man, there is just no way. We can make excuses for this or just choose to ignore it for the sake of enjoyment. However, after Saw 3, when Kramer finally kicks the bucket, we start an even stupider pattern of apprentice after apprentice taking over. And it turns out not only did Kramer plan the stuff he did whilst he was alive, but he's also planned for years and years after that. Having his plans drag on for years after his death is not only a tad excessive, but also reads as plain stupid if you really think about it. It reduces Jigsaw from being an insanely intense cancer patient / evil mastermind to a boring, played out trope that we just can't wait to end. 1. It Chapter 2. Pennywise. There is no better literal example of this than the defeat of Pennywise in It Chapter 2, and it's kind of up to you whether you think that's a good or a bad thing in the film. When the Losers Club unite a final time to take down Pennywise for good, there's no way that at the start of the film and through all its subsequent scares and horrors, we could have guessed that the way to end his reign of terror was simply to undermine his self-confidence. Pennywise is meant to be an all-powerful eater of worlds, but apparently when you subject him to some light ribbing, he becomes so unhappy with himself that he literally shrinks and deflates like a huge, ugly beach ball. I guess somewhere in there's a hidden message about believing in yourself and not letting other people's opinion take you down, but in this case it kind of looked like an endorsement of bullying. So yeah, turns out the easiest way to get rid of one of horror's scariest villains is just to hurl a few insults at him, and then sit back and enjoy as he devolves into a babbling mess. You almost feel sorry for the guy. Well, with that, we've reached the end of this list of 8 horror movies that turned badasses into total wimps. If you can think of any more examples, then please let us know in the comments down below. And remember to check out whatculture.com for more lists and articles like this every single day. I've been Amy from What Culture, and just like Freddy Krueger, I'll catch you next time.